Thank you. So today I want to introduce you with the basic terms of the Iranian ideology. We will look for the roots from the Islamic Revolution, and we will see the Iranian activities across the Middle East, in Yemen, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, of course, Syria, quite Afghanistan. And my aim here is to show you that this transnational terrorist ally does not belong to Qasem Soleimani. Qasem Soleimani was the head of this important structure, but he came to office only in 1997. Before him, there was Ahmad Bahidi, which began his term in 1990. Before Ahmad Bahidi, there was huge and extensive activities of the IRGC Quds Force across the Middle East during the 80s. We will see that already in the Iran-Iraq war, Iran started to foster various militias and actually gained an important experience in this field of proxy warfare. Proxy warfare is the key word here. The ideology seeks eventually to topple the Sunni regimes, to replace it with Islamic regimes. As we can see in the CIA archives, this mission was never completed. They understood during the 80s that it's very difficult. So the aim from 1987, the aim is to establish like-minded regimes. We will see that now. But my first request from you is to see the title, Fighting the Little Satans. We will see here many important actions which depicts the subversive policy of Iran. But on the paper, you will see that Iran always recognizes the sovereignty of the other countries. Iran does not meddle in any affairs of the Middle Eastern countries. In the battlefield, we know these persons, and I will show you the ideological roots from the Constitution, declarations of Khamenei and Khomeini, and I want to start with this. Declarations about the little Satans. Khomeini, even prior to his return to Iran in the Islamic Revolution in February in 1979, described the Sunni monarchies here in the Middle East as little Satans. According to Khomeini, it's only two options. You are with us or against us. You are the pro-American, you're with the pro-American camp, or you belong to the real Islamic camp. What does it mean, Islamic camp? It can be Sunni, but you must be anti-American. Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis was already involved from the early stage of the Islamic Revolution with the subversive policy of Iran. Imad Moghnieh, the day after the Islamic Revolution happened, there are reports in the Persian media that Imad Moghnieh came to Tehran. And I want you to understand that these links between the Iranian establishment and their Arab clients started already in the 60s. People from the Shiite communities in Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia learned in Manchrof, where Khomeini lectured. And this was the place where these introductions were made. Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis already bombed the American embassy in Kuwait. the French embassy in Kuwait in December 83. And we know the links between Hezbollah and the IRGC groups first from the day that Hezbollah was established. So the aim is to replace these Satans with Islamic regimes, and they, as we just said, with like-minded regimes. So it's not personal. Qasem Soleimani led this policy from 1997, but there was huge experience that Iran gained during the 80s and the 90s. We will see it now. We will see it now. Some key questions. We need to understand what are the Iranians are looking for, what is the raison d'etre of the IRGC. We will see here the establishment order of the IRGC. It's very understand to see this order, it's very unique. What are the motivation? What motivates the Islamic Republic of Iran to meddle in affairs of the Middle Eastern countries? What are the methods and warfare conducted by the IRI to promote its goals? What pushed the IRI to keep its huge investment in the region despite the maximum pressure campaign? We will see the effective policy of Trump, but still, Iran is keen to export, as we will know now. We see it now, this notion, exporting the revolution. Iran is keen to export its revolution to the region. What drives the Shiite militias? Is it money or ideology? And finally, do the sanctions affect the IRGC and its militias? Okay, I want to take you back to the Constitution. There was a debate. It wasn't easy. There was a debate between the liberal camp of Bani Sadr, you know the names, Mehdi Bazargan, the liberal camp, and the Khomeini camp. Finally, the Khomeini's faction won this important battle about the strategy of the regime. What do we want to do? Bani Sadr and his camp said, what do we care about Lebanon? What do we care about Saudi Arabia? We can be a model and they can emulate our model. And Khomeini said exactly the opposite. We have to help them to emulate our model. Okay. So you can see in the Constitution is written with the hope that this will be the century of the universal rule of the oppressed and the defeat of all the oppressors. We are the oppressed people, we are the Shiites in Iran, and we have a mission. It's not restricted only to Iran. This is important because we will see it soon in Iraq, Bahrain, where are the oppressed people? But I want to tell you something. In Syria, we will focus on Syria, but I want to tell you now. The Muslim Brotherhood of Syria heard this notion of oppressed, and they came to Khomeini in 1983, after the massacre of Hama. And they told Khomeini, we need help, we need assistance. We want to assist the oppressed people. But Khomeini chose to assist Assad because Khomeini defined the oppressed people. He will choose who are the oppressed ones, who are the oppressors. It's very important to understand it because already today we can say that in China, for example, there are oppressed Shiites, but Iran does not and will not help them. Iran needs China. So Iran is defining who are the oppressed ones according to its own interest. The IRGC is authorized to expand the rule of God worldwide. How can it do that? It must help and assist in any way to freedom seekers movement. We will see this now. Still roots of the vision of exporting the Islamic revolution in the Constitution, the Revolutionary Constitution. Article 11 authorizes the IRI to meddle in affairs of other Muslim countries under the pretext of striving to gain Muslim unity. So I am authorized to meddle in your country because I want to help you to gain Muslim unity. This is the pretext. There are many other articles. The strategy is clear. The IRI is tasked to give comprehensive aid and support to oppressed movements and nations, mainly Islamic, but not only. It's important to understand this. The mission of the Islamic Revolution is universal. First, in the Middle East, but then, as we can see, in Latin America, Africa, Asia, and at the end, I want to show you also America itself, New York, Washington. I want to emphasize that the IRGC, at its first stage, was already defined as a transnational element. It's not a regular army. The regular army, its mission is to defend the country, the borders, but we have another army in Iran, which is the IRGC, and it should export the Islamic Revolution worldwide. This is written in the establishment order of the IRGC. This is the base for the support for Al-Nujaba, Saib al-Khaq, the other Iraqi militias which we will see now, and also Afghanistan. I will refer to it also. During the 80s, it was the first time that the IRGC began to export its Islamic Revolution. In Saudi Arabia, we saw intensive activities, terror attacks by the Hezbollah Hijaz, and another organization which only demanded reforms. So, when Iran wanted to take revenge for the bloody Hajj of 1987, it asks the other organization, the Organization for the Islamic Revolution in the Arabian Peninsula, but they refused to take terror attacks against their own countries. So Iran established Hezbollah Hijaz, gave it comprehensive aid, financial aid and arms, and it conducted several strategic attacks against oil facilities and Saudi diplomats worldwide. Now, after the assassination of Captain Soleimani, this Hezbollah Hijaz vows to take revenge of the assassination, but I must tell you that in 1996, this organization was dissolved by Rafsanjani, who was number 2 in the hierarchy of the regime, after understandings between the Saudi king and Rafsanjani. Iran needed to have good relations with Saudi Arabia for several reasons. After the Khobar bombing, which this organization committed, in which it killed 28 American soldiers in the Khobar base, military base. So Iran dissolved this organization in accordance with its own interest. Now, after the assassination, we saw for the first time in some decades that Hezbollah Hijaz publish announcements and vote to take revenge for the assassination. In Bahrain, the Islamic Front for the Liberation of Bahrain was very active during the 80s. It was the platform in which Iran tried to topple the regime already in 1981. Iran denies any involvement in the failed rebellion which was there, but it was behind this organization. And Hezbollah Kuwait, which consisted of many pupils.
Shiite?
Only Shiites, yeah. These are Shiites. Hezbollah Kuwait, which consisted of religious clerics which were learning in Qom, in the seminaries of Iran, and the Iranian intelligence ministry formed these militias, and they conducted also some terror attacks against Kuwait. So during the 80s, it was the first time that Iran gained such an important experience in this field of proxy warfare. It's important because I want you to understand that in Syria, it is not the first time and not the second time that Iran is using terror cells, terror organization. Let's see what happened to the Fatima Militia. You heard about the Fatima Militia, the Afghan operatives, but it was already here in the Iran-Iraq war. Here, it was called Abu Zar. There were several militias that fought shoulder to shoulder with the IGC against the Iraqi army. The Badr Corps, this is Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. He and Hadi al-Amiri, the head of the Badr Corps today, Badr organization. They led the Badr Corps during the 80s, but there was an Afghan militia which was fostered by the Quds Force during the 80s. They fought in the Iran-Iraq war and sent back to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan. This is the platform that the Fatimiyun was based on. There were several Bahraini operatives which fought against the Iraqi army. Hezbollah, of course, gained important experience in this war. Amal operatives came to Iran to fight, and I wanted to see this amazing picture that Iraqi operatives, Shiite, are fighting against the Iraqi army, which is a Shiite army. Almost all the fighters, all the soldiers in Iraq, many of them are Shiites. So there are Shiites against Shiites. 20% of the Iraqi Shiites preferred to go to Iran to fight against their own country. The key to understand the Iranian strategy is the basic understanding that these militias are fighting against the interest of their own country. We saw it now in the Iraqi model, but also in Bahrain. We'll see soon Bahraini militias fighting against their own government. And then we have the Iraq War in 2003. After Saddam was toppled, the war was finished. The mission was completed. It's not a classic war. It's actually an undeclared war between Iran and the United States. This is the second experience, huge experience, that Iran gained in proxy warfare. See how much militias, these are the most dominant militias. And besides these militias, we have also Al-Qaeda Iraq, headed by Zarqawi. Iran assisted by finance and arms to Al-Qaeda to commit huge terror attacks against the American troops in Iraq. We know, according to the Pentagon, that these militias killed at least 608 American troops. And I tell you, according to my own experience, that Al-Qaeda Iraq killed much more American troops than these militias. Jaish al-Mahdi, we know from the interrogation of Qais Khazali, we'll see him soon. He was interrogated by the American army, and he revealed that he and Muqtada Sadr came to Tehran the day after Saddam was toppled, and Qasem Soleimani promised them, I will give you the money, I will give you the arm, start targeting the Americans. We need to expel them from Iraq. Why? Why so important for Iran to expel the Americans from Iraq? There are some reasons. I want to refer to the main two reasons. To my opinion, first, it could be a nightmare for Khamenei if a Shiite country, Iraq, 60% of Iraq are Shiites, can be a democracy. It can give bad ideas to the Iranian citizens. It's not what Khamenei wants to have in Iran, as you know. Secondly, just imagine what can happen to the national interest of Iran if Iraq is now a platform, American platform to attack Iran. Just imagine what can happen to the security of the borders, to the nuclear facilities, to Iran itself, to the regime. And thirdly, I want to stress that Iraq is very important for Iran to smuggle goods and oil and to bypass the sanctions. So there is no chance that Khamenei could permit the Bush administration to stay in Iraq anyway. That's why it led so many militias. Each militia was given huge sums of money, billions of dollars. You know what's the AFP? It's very fatal explosive. It killed at least some hundreds of American soldiers, and of course training for the operatives. So they came to Iran on the next day that Saddam was toppled, and Soleimani promised them arms and financial aid. But in 2007, Muqtada Sadr declared, 2008, sorry, declared that he is quitting the military field, and he just now wants to concentrate, to focus on the political arena. So he established the Promised Day Brigades. It was a trick to deceive the Americans. And Promised Day Brigades is also assisted by the Iraqi Quds Force. Hezbollah, Kataib Hezbollah, which you know, its leader, Kataib Abu al-Muhandis, was the most fatal organization from this list, because the arms which were smuggled by the Iraqi Quds Force to Iran, to this militia, was the most fatal weapons that the IGC Quds Force had. And Asayib al-Haq was a platform that was split also from the Muqtada Sadr, because there were quarrels between Muqtada Sadr and Asayib al-Haq and Qais Khazali. So Soleimani preferred to give each one of them his own militia, so they can concentrate on the real battle against the US and not one against the other. And then we came to Syria. After the experience that Iran gained in the Iran-Iraq war, in Iraq, after it won, because Obama decided to withdraw from Iraq, as you know, in 2011, Iran was ready to assist Assad in any price, but we are still talking about proxy warfare. I will explain the identities. This is Akram al-Kabi, the head of al-Nujaba. Akram al-Kabi was tied to Soleimani from 2003 already, because he was the senior commander of Jaish al-Mahdi, of Muqtada Sadr. So now he took the command of new militia al-Nujaba. Qais al-Khazali from Asayib al-Haq was tied with Soleimani for many years. Now his activities were focused in Syria. It's 2011-12. Remember that ISIS appeared only one year after. Badr organization, we know Hadi al-Amiri. He's here in the photo, we don't see him here. Badr organization was involved in the Iran-Iraq war, fought against the Iraqi army. And Abu al-Muhandis, you know him very well, was also killed with Qasem Soleimani recently. And then ISIS appeared. So what happened when ISIS appeared? Part of the militias were forced to go to Iraq to fight ISIS. but they were headed by Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. So the PMU, the Hashd al-Shabi, the Popular Mobilization Forces, were headed by Soleimani's aide. And in 2015, when Abadi confirmed this law that the PMU would be financed by the Iraqi government and not by the Iranian government, he wanted to have the control over the PMU. But they are emulating the rules of Khamenei. They are Shiites. Remember that. We have an Ayatollah, Grand Ayatollah, it could be Khamenei or Ali Sistani, the Iraqi, which is based in Najaf. It's very important because if you are emulating the rules of Khamenei, then you are rejecting the rules of your own country. You are part of the Iranian axis. So they are emulating the rules of Khamenei and they don't cover this. They say it clearly. We have also Zainabiyun from Pakistan, because one of the missions of Soleimani in this proxy war was to use as much as foreign operatives that he can, because he didn't want to lose Iranian soldiers in this war. And Hezbollah, of course, as the chief master, was also sent to the battle. Hezbollah also trained the Iraqi militiamen. By the way, I want to show you here. During the Iraq War, Hezbollah assisted the Shiite ally and the Sunni ally of Al-Qaeda, Iraq, in two ways. First, Tal al-Khamiyya was based in Damascus, following an order of Soleimani, and he smuggled operatives of Al-Qaeda to Iraq to target the Americans. Other Hezbollah operatives, especially al-Musavi, which now is the head of the Golan file of Hezbollah, they were the commanders of this ally: Ali Yusuf Hashem, Ali al-Musavi, and Tal al-Khamiyya, we said him before. They were the commanders of this ally, so Hezbollah the operatives were sent to Iraq, and they had in Basra a military base in which they trained the Iraqi operatives under the nose of the British Army. Only in 2008, the British Army revealed that Hezbollah is training operatives, Shiite operatives there, and then Hezbollah was forced to leave the place. But Hezbollah also, as Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis revealed in one of his interviews, Hezbollah also planned terror attacks of these militias. So Hezbollah was deeply involved in this war and gained important experience, which assisted him here in the Syrian war, because Hezbollah, in the hierarchy of the militias, is higher than the other militias. Why is Syria so important for Iran? There are several reasons. As you know, it's a strategic backyard of Iran. There was a defense pact in 2006. This is an alliance of minorities. The defense pact was very important in 2011 because the defense pact says that if one country is attacked or dragged into a war, the other country must assist her and join the war. Mehdi Tayyib, he's the brother of Hussein Tayyib, the head of the intelligence branch of the RRGC, and he himself, Mehdi Tayyib, is a senior member of the Amariyun think tank, which advised to Khamenei. And many times said in February 2013, Syria is an Iranian province. The loss of Syria will lead us to the loss of Tehran itself. Preserving the existence of the Syrian regime of Assad is even more important to the IRI than preserving the oil-rich southern Iranian province of Khuzestan. You know Khuzestan, despite the later strategic and economic importance, and this is Arab-dominated region, which is very sensitive for Iran, also for security reasons. The Arab minority is a much more radical minority of the other minorities in Iran. So you can see the reasons why Iran is deeply involved in Syria and is ready to pay huge price for saving Assad. In Yemen, Iran assists Ansarullah. There are only 35 or 40% of the population which are Shiites, as part of its motivation to take revenge of Saudi Arabia. In 2011, there was a Shiite rebellion in Bahrain. Bahrain consisted of some 80% of Shiites. Saudi Arabia dispatched its army, equipped with tanks, and thwarted this rebellion. The IRGC commanders preferred not to meddle in this could be a direct fight between Iran and Saudi Arabia, but they vowed to take revenge. What did they do? They started the Yemenite project. They smuggled ballistic missiles to Yemen. They dispatched one of the deputies of Soleimani, who is named Abdul Reza Shahlahi. He is the head of the Quds Force branch in Yemen. And they sent Khalil Harb of Hezbollah, who is very known to part of the crowd here. He is the senior commander of Hezbollah who fought against Israel, against the IDF long years ago. And from 2015, the head of the Hezbollah branch here is Abu Ali Tabatabai, another senior commander of Hezbollah. He's based in Yemen. They assist the Yemenites. They are equipping the Yemenites in ballistic missiles and other missiles. They can shot here at the Red Sea the vessels. Until today, if they want to take revenge of Israel or American army. But they want to take revenge of Saudi Arabia. So once the rebellion in Bahrain was thwarted, you could see that the Yemenite militia of Ansarullah is gaining more and more power, and gradually they started to launch missile attacks against Saudi Arabia. They reached Riyadh and Mecca. And they also have drones which enable them to attack the UAE, which is part of the Saudi-led coalition against the Yemenite army. In Bahrain, until today, it's one of the most sensitive arenas because there is the Fifth Fleet, the Fifth Fleet of the U.S. Navy is there, and also other American facilities. Iran assists Sarai al-Ashtar and Sarai al-Mukhtar. These are the main two Shiite militias which are operating in this arena. Again, training in Iran, our smuggling to Bahrain. The leadership is based in Iran, but we can see that the weapons which the militias are equipped with are not so fatal. They don't have EFP. So their operations, their terror attacks, are not so fatal as the Iraqi ones, and of course not as such as Hezbollah or the Yemenite Ansarullah. But if Iran wants, the Bahraini militias can target the Fifth Fleet. It's very dangerous for the American interest. Yesterday at the funeral of Soleimani, we saw Bahraini flags waving in Tehran. This was one of the symbols. And these two militias vowed to take revenge So Iran is signaling its capabilities to target the Fifth Fleet. You know, the American embassy, they wrote the Iraqi militiamen, Soleimani is our commander. So let's see the deep relations between the Shiite militias and Iran. I want to emphasize this is loyalty and obedience, full obedience to Khamenei. I talked about the religious links. See what the spokesman of the Ansar Allah said about Khamenei. We see your rule a continuation of the path of the Prophet of Islam, this is Muhammad, and the rule of the commander of the believers, this is Imam Ali, the founder of the Shiites. I believe that some of the militias are actually in full subversion to the Iranian control. They own the existence and capabilities to IRI. And finally, it's not just the money, it's power and status that Iran is giving them through this comprehensive aid. Qais Khazali, Hadi al-Amari, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, the late Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, could not gain their status in Iraq and their prominence status over the other rebels with not the Iranian assistance. It's important because there are many Shiites who prefer to expel the Iranians from Iraq. We have seen it from the beginning of October. Most of the Shiites in Iraq, millions of people, joined the protest against Iran. And as I said in the beginning of the lecture, only 20% of the Iraqi Shiites preferred during the 80s to join Iran and to fight their Iraqi army. So, last questions. Let's see the effect of the American maximum pressure campaign against the RGC. We know that there is some effect about the Iranian economy. We have seen this in the draft that Rouhani submitted to the parliament in December. But I want to stress.
And this was approved?
Sorry?
This was approved?
No, not yet. It's about to be now. About the economy, we saw the economic difficulties of Iran, but the budget of the IRGC has another sources. Iran military establishment, especially the IRGC, does not depend solely on the state budget for its funding. The military establishment controls a fifth of the market value of companies listed on the Tehran Stock Exchange and owns thousands of other companies, all of which generate revenue for the armed forces. Additionally, the IRGC controls a significant portion of Iran's underground economy. That's why Iran must have maximum control over Iraq. Iraq is very important for this smuggling, which finally consists an important share of the budget of the IRGC. Yeah, we finished.
When you talk about the military, is it both IRGC and army? That the military establishment controls a fifth of the market value?
Of the IRGC budget?
Yes, but this military establishment, it's both IRGC and the army of Iran? IRGC and the army of Iran?
No. IRGC only.
Only IRGC?
Yeah. That's a good point to make. Okay, yeah.
Iran has influence or trying to get influence in most countries that have a large Shiite majority. Now, Israel's special relationship with Azerbaijan, which has a common border. Do they have Iranians? Are they trying to influence the people, the Azerbaijan government in their favor? Because it's a bit, they have a common border with Iran, and the U.S. has bases in Azerbaijan. We know that, and we have a special relationship.
In which country?
Azerbaijan.
Yes. There are some indications, and we saw terror attacks in the recent years of Shiite elements in the Azerbaijan, but I think that it's not extensive as you can see in Iraq and other countries, because because of the good relations between Israel and Azerbaijan, I believe that Israel assists the Azeri government in this field. I saw that Rouhani government extensively tried to improve the relations with the Azeri government after the terror attacks, because they believe that if they would hug the government, it would leave eventually Israel, because Azerbaijan is much more close to Iran than to Israel. This is the final. That's the geography who spells the reality. Another question?
You spoke about the Shiites in Iraq protesting against Iranian influence, and Muqtada al-Sadr, he was a part of this, and now, after Qasem Soleimani was assassinated, we saw him paying condolences visits at his family and everything, and showing his sympathy.
Right.
The question is this assassination of Soleimani, is this something that might be like creating a joint enemy, and now Assad will go back to Iranian influence, or is it just a political move he has to do to show that he's not supporting
I suggest to be careful with the visit of Sadr in Iran. We saw him also in the recent Ashura. He participated in the Ashura ceremony of Khamenei's office next to Khamenei and Soleimani. There were pictures. Sadr's origins are Iranians, not Iraqis. In the 18th century, this family, some of it moved to Iraq, some of it moved to Lebanon, and this is a mistake to think that the Sadr family is an Arab. It's actually an Iranian. 3 different former Iranian officials told me that. I believe that Sadr is now checking his options. In the Iraq war, he was assisted by Iran for the sake of expelling the Americans, but now the main aim of Sadr is to win the popularity of the street. He would do what is most popular in the Iraqi streets. That's the final say. There is a quarrel now in Iraq between the pro-American camp, which want to, no, it's not pro-American, sorry, dependent camp, which want to expel the Iranians, and the pro-Iranian wing, which, as you can see, they attacked the American embassy.
We're talking about Azerbaijan. Iran is an ethnically heterogeneous country. We don't hear about this much, but is there, to what extent is there sort of, at the fault lines of some of the protests that we're seeing reflecting Azeri minority, Baluchi minority? Is Iran worried? Is there any sense that there's
Yes, it is definitely, but that's why Iran invested so many efforts to thwart any demand, and you can see it in the football games that the crowd shouts, we want to be with our Azeri brothers. They want to re-emerge the Azeri country. Iran is buying some of the officials there, the key officials, by money. And you can see in the recent protests, several indications show that many people joined the protest in the Azeri fields, Azeri parts of Iran, as well as the Kurds. There was here a recommendation of the former Mossad chief, Meir Dagan, who said that we have to concentrate on the Azeri minority, and this is can be the start of the downfall of this regime. We have to remember also that 2 things. The origins of Khamenei, his mother is Azeri, was Azeri, and many Azeris regard themselves as unique part of the Iranian country. There is a quarrel between this community, and I believe that the minority part of this community want to re-emerge the Azeri country.
In light of what happened last week and also the protests in Iran itself, what are the chances of regime change? And if it's a possible scenario, how would that come about?
I have a good contact with a journalist in Tehran, which once in a while is telling me what happened in the street. He himself was surprised by the protest. People in Iran choose not to read newspapers They are not following the news. They are depressed from the political situation. I believe that only in the day after Khamenei, there is a chance to see any change in the regime, because people do not believe in this option of revolution. They want evolution, political evolution. But they are very disappointed from Rouhani. I want to emphasize, it's very important for the whole crowd. Rouhani is leading an elected entity, the organization. But all the authorities are in the hands of the unelected organizations. I mean, to the Supreme Leader and the IRGC and the Basij.
And the what?
Basij. The militia of the regime to oppress any rebel. So Rouhani disappointed his voters because he lacks any authority. He tried to gain more authorities to be, in last 2 months, he wanted to be the deputy leader of Iran, but Khamenei and the IRGC rejected this initiative. The more that people are becoming more disappointed from the pragmatic wing of the regime, the more they become radical, and then eventually they will take the steps to topple the regime. But I believe that the masses will go out to the streets only in the day after Khamenei, but you don't see yet any agenda and any leadership that can foster any real opposition. And it's very difficult once the regime shut down the internet to have a real opposition, because they need to speak with other people from Tabriz, from Rash, from Isfahan, from the Ahwazi parts. They need to communicate. So the Americans I wrote it down in my paper. The Americans must meddle and give them any access to the internet. They have the capabilities.
So no matter how dramatic these sanctions are or will continue, that won't really be the game changer in terms of regime change?
It's matter, because eventually you see that people, especially from the most poor elements of the population, joining the protest, and these poor people are the political base of the regime. This is the regime of the oppressed. I wrote it down in the presentation. So this is the political base of the regime. See? Yeah.
Continuing on this focus when it comes to the people and economics, to some extent, if I understand it correctly, you have a huge economic burden coming from the sanctions of the Americans that's been reimposed after a glimmer of hope with this failed nuclear deal. And then you have Iran spending a mass wealth supporting militias and armies in efforts of exporting the revolution abroad. What's the reality on the street? How bad is it economically for the common Iranian? Can the oil money lubricate the suffering?
According to the witness that I heard from Tehran, it's very bad. People are working in 2 posts in order to have enough money, not to gain all what they want in the supermarket, but also not this. And at the Friday sermon, it's very interesting. You can see 2 things. One, the people of Khamenei chanting slogans. There is no must to eat chicken every Friday. That's one slogan. Be modest with your request. We have some higher demands from this Islamic revolution. And second, it's very interesting to know, everyone who is not coming, who is not attending the Friday sermons, are suspected to have oppositionist trends. So if you're not coming, it's very bad to your business. If you are Americans in the market, it's very important for the relations between the establishment. So people are coming, but they don't support the slogans. And also in Quds Day. If you are coming to the Quds Day, to the processions, so you can continue your work. But if you're not coming, your work is not, it's at risk. Okay. Yeah.
Yossi, your presentation exposed very clearly in a very systemic way the expansion of a proxy warfare, both in time
in space very clearly. And this is, I think, the conclusion. But what I want to hear your opinion: how can the regime sustain such a strategy with the sanctions over time?
The regime changed, good question. The regime changed its strategy in the Aramco attack. This was the risk that Khamenei took because of the sanctions, and he put Iran at the front. That's why Soleimani was killed. Once that Soleimani and the Soleimani is a symbol. He didn't attack Aramco facilities, but the Iranian Air Force with the missiles. But once the Iranians are at the front, this is a huge mistake, it's a strategic mistake, because that was one of the calculations that led Trump to assassinate Soleimani at the end. Soleimani also planned some terror attacks against the American facilities in Iraq. So I believe that eventually Trump could not do something else. But I believe that today this is the combined strategy. They using the proxy warfare. These identities we keep seeing them in the battlefield, but they also trying to use their own force. We are also we see it in the news in Iran. They vote to take a direct revenge.
So
It's
if,
also
if we're trying to look forward, what do you think the implications of Soleimani's death would be?
they are trying to take revenge in the most probable arena. It could be Latin America, it could be in Saudi Arabia, any American interest that is more comfortable for Iran to attack, it could be the target. But I also suggest you to take a look at the strategy of Talal Khamia, Unit 910 of Hezbollah, which is in charge of foreign attacks. They had some terror cells in New York, Michigan, and Washington. You know Ali Kourani. Ali Kourani was recruited for Hezbollah in 1996. And the FBI arrested him in 2017. Mohammed al-Debek, recruited at the beginning of the 2000, and they arrested him in 2017. And Alexei Saib also was arrested in 2018. He was recruited some 20 years ago. So there is also an option of a homeland terror attack.
Okay, Keith, let's
Yeah.
Well, can you go back to your graph that you had of the spending for a second?
The Constitution?
No. It was the budget.
Oh, yeah.
The economic. Yeah, the economic.
It was not approved yet.
There you
Here.
go. So you see how there's such a negative
Right.
in their budget. You have Iran being squeezed. They're now going forward on the nuclear program, doing all these things abroad. Eventually, I'm sure there'll be some sort of back and forth military stuff. What's an Iranian plan to come out of the economic problems they have long term? How does this serve them? I'm looking at red.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any chance for red to turn to blue. What's their long-term plan to?
One is to get rid of Trump. They hope that he would not be reelected. They asked Mike Duran, you know Mike Duran from the Hudson think tank. He revealed that until the assassination, there were ongoing indirect talks between Tehran and Washington. And they tried all the time to whisper, that's what he said, to whisper in the ears of the White House officials. They tried to have the right formula so the US can ignore the sanctions, remove the sanctions, but the much that Khamenei is ready to give right now is just a green light for talks only. And Trump is a businessman. He rejected this Iranian initiative, and that's why eventually he saw that there is no use in talks, so he preferred to assassinate Soleimani.
Yossi, thank you very much.
Thank you very
This
much.
was fascinating. This is for you. Come, where are you going? This is for you.
Thank you very much.
And this is for you. You were not here in the morning. This is Cliff's book. He's the author. He wrote a book about the Galilee, about stories of people of the Galilee. So
Great.
this is special edition.
We'll
Thank you
still
very
have
much.
some changes to be made.
Thank you very
Not
much.
published yet.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.